Hi, this is your Chapter 13 mini lecture on conflict and negotiation. Here are the learning outcomes for this chapter. You may pause your screen to read them if you choose. We're first going to start by looking at the nature of conflicts in organizations. So there are two types of conflict. There's both functional and dysfunctional. It took me a long time myself to realize that sometimes conflict is good. It can be healthy as long as it's a constructive disagreement between two or more people. It can result in new ideas, new ways of learning, and growth. It can help improve working relations, and it can lead to innovation and positive change. I was in a meeting just today where there was a little bit of disagreement, but it was very functional in terms of we ultimately came to a good decision because we talked through the disagreement. Dysfunctional conflict is probably what most of us think about when we think about conflict. It's unhealthy, destructive. It drains your energy. It's very emotional or behavioral. It can be very aggressive or retaliatorial. And your losses may be greater than any potential that was gained from that. So there's different structural and personal factors that play into what causes conflict in organizations. I actually love this graphic. I don't always love them. So you have your boxing ring here or a conflict. So we have structural factors such as our specializations, how interdependent the different divisions or aspects are, what resources people are sharing, the goals, the authority levels in those relationships, inconsistencies in statuses, ambiguities or just unknowns. And then there's personal factors such as skills and abilities, our personalities, how we perceive things, our different values and ethics, our emotions, communication issues, and then cultural differences. So we're going to look at group conflict in organizations. There's three main types. There's interorganizational conflict, which occurs when between two or more organizations, so separate entities. So business A and business B, basically, or school A and school B. There's intergroup conflict, which occurs between groups or teams within an organization. So, for example, Department A and Department B are having conflict. And then there's intragroup, which occurs within our own groups or teams. Next, we're going to look at the factors that influence conflict between individuals. So the types of intrapersonal conflict. There's interrole conflict. This is just when a person experiences conflict among their many roles. So for example, home-life balance, homework conflict, home service to the community conflict, work service to the community conflict, you get the idea. Intra-role conflict occurs within a single role, and this happens when a person receives conflicting messages from senders, or maybe it's authority figures or your boss, about how to perform a role. And then there's person role conflict, and this occurs when the expected benefit or the expected behaviors of an individual or what they're expected to do don't align with their personal values. So there's different types of defense mechanisms people take when when they are dealing with conflict. There's aggressive, compromise, and withdrawal. I bet we can all think of times we've used all of these, but I bet that we tend to lean towards one more than the other. So in aggressive, you can be very fixated. It tends to maintain that dysfunctional behavior that's not going to solve the conflict. People tend to direct their anger towards someone who may or may not be the source of the conflict, and then they tend to be very pessimistic. Oh, that's never going to work, or whatever that might be. I would say it's not the best coping mechanism. Next is compromise. Within compromise, there's compensation. So you're attempting to make up for a negative situation by attempting to devote yourself to something else. There's identification, which is trying to emulate or mimic the behavior of another person. And then there's rationalization, trying to justify your behavior by constructing reasons for why it occurred. And then in withdrawal mechanisms, you've probably heard of fight or flight. So flight here is like physically leaving the conflict. Like I physically am going to walk out of the room. Withdrawal psychologically withdrawing from that conflict, and then conversion. And these are emotional conflicts which are expressed with physical symptoms. So maybe something is there's a conflict at work, but it actually makes you feel sick, like literally sick. And then fantasy provides an escape from conflict through daydreaming. Next, we're going to describe effective and ineffective techniques for managing conflict. All right, so there's competitive strategy. So somebody wins, somebody loses. This can be bad because it can be dishonest communication, there can be mistrust, and nobody's really giving anything. Um, Cooperative strategy is founded on the idea that you can have a win-win situation. And this is done through honest communication, trust, openness, risk, vulnerability, and really thinking that the whole is maybe greater than the individual piece. There's some different conflict management techniques. So some ineffective or less effective techniques are to do nothing, to have secrecy, to gossip, to have secrets, administrative orbiting, no action on due processes, character assassination, like talking bad about people. And then some effective techniques are really appealing to your supervisor's goals or your boss's goals, providing additional resources, changing out personnel, changing structures, really confronting the issues, and then providing opportunities for negotiation. So in negotiation, there's some different approaches. There's distributive bargaining, and these are the goals are that each party seeks to maximize its resources. And then in integrative negotiation, the goals are not seen as mutually exclusive, and the focus is on both sides achieving their objectives. Some factors that might be considered in the negotiation is cultural differences as well as gender, because both do play a role in our negotiation styles. Next, we're going to look at 5 styles of conflict management. And we look at this from on this continuum of uncooperative to cooperative and unassertive to assertive. So if you're right in the middle, you're compromising. All right, so you're not too assertive and you're pretty kind of cooperative. If you're over here and you're unassertive and uncooperative, you're really just avoiding. If you're unassertive and cooperating, you tend to be more accommodating. Uncooperative but very assertive is competing, and cooperative and assertive is collaborating. All right, and so you can look at this table in your book to look at different situations in which you would have these different conflict handling styles. All right, so that's all I have. That's your mini lecture for chapter 13. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to contact me. Thanks.